Hi everyone, great you all made it here to this talk discussing stabilization mechanism, their risks, their differences and how they will evolve in the long term. Let me kick off this panel by having the panelists introduce themselves, their stablecoin and how the mechanism works for the stabilization themselves.
Okay, thanks very much. So it's great to be here. I'm Lewis Gudgeon. I'm one of the co-founders of the Gyroscope stablecoin. It's a stablecoin that's about to launch. It's fully reserve backed. The idea of the stablecoin is that the reserve is as diversified as possible. So it aims for some type of maximal resilience in the diversification of the reserve assets. And then it combines this with a new redemption mechanism that tries to ensure some orderly outflows from the reserve. Are we still,
Thank you.
Still safe?
Yeah, I think we're good. Hey guys, my name is Benjamin. I'm one of the core contributors for Cheetao. Cheetao, for those who don't know, is a stablecoin, CDP stablecoin, kind of like MakerDAO. Our big innovation was that we were the first native cross-chain protocol, meaning that instead of just minting your stablecoin from one chain, in this case Ethereum, you can mint it from any chain. And this was pretty revolutionary because of how the bridging would have to work, right? There are a lot of risks involved with bridging and how the chains interact with each other, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But the result is, you get to be where the users are, because a lot of people are not on Ethereum. Most people are not on Ethereum. So yeah, that's the high level.
Interesting, thanks. Yeah, cross-chain, we're going to discuss about these specific risks later. But Michael, do you want to quickly go ahead?
Yeah, so I mean, I probably already introduced.
Sure. Everyone knows you, and we just had the fireside chat before discussing your protocol, your mechanism. So I guess we can dive right in. Ben, what was the hardest part in designing your mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part by far was the lack of infrastructure at the time. This stablecoin has been live for a very long time, and our thesis was cross-chain in a time where there were no bridges. And so how do you do that, right? Well, there were very, very few bridges, and the bridges that existed were far from optimal. And so we had to create this canonical bridging standard, basically where you maintain the sovereignty of your token, and you're the only one that can mint it. And then you just allow different whitelisted parties to exchange the stablecoin between different chains. And if something happens to that bridge, you can always offboard them. So the best example is multi-chain, for example. At the time when we launched, they were the only serious bridge, the only bridge that was on many chains. And so obviously that's the only thing we went with. At the time when they were, let's call it hacked, we were able to offboard it in maybe 3 minutes. So taking out 100% of the MI that was in that bridge within 3 minutes. Now the hard thing is a different one is the collaterals backing, but yeah, that's basically the hardest thing we had to go through.
Super interesting, thanks. Luis, so how does it compare to your experience on your end?
So, I mean, I think things that were difficult for us to make, I mean, the design of the system itself, the Gyroscope stablecoin, actually sort of pretty straightforward. Just a diversified reserve, plus some redemption mechanism that's a sort of decaying function. But we've also built some sort of concentrated liquidity pools that use an ellipse to do the pricing. So the redemption curve and the ellipse to do the pricing, these are kind of new pieces of innovation, essentially. It's like a new type of way to do these things. So yeah, the implementation of them, fairly fiddly, but the sort of high level idea, certainly for the redemption curve, is actually fairly straightforward.
I actually have a question for Gyroscope as well. For most CDPs, the value is leverage, or the value is financing in the case of governance tokens. What do you see as the kind of like the reason for Gyroscope stablecoin to exist? Like what's kind of like the value add?
Yeah, so like.
Sorry for jumping in.
Yeah, so I mean, no issue at all with the CDP model. I think the more innovation there, the better. Obviously, it caters to this like demand for leverage. That's important. Obviously, though, this itself comes with like fairly significant risk. Like we've seen like over and over again. It's like just this like boring story now in DeFi of like what happens when asset prices crash for the underlying collateral. And you end up with these like death spirals where you just like can't sort of keep loans from going underwater. This is obviously like the main, or one of the main issues with the CDP model. That's not to say it's not like a very useful model in many situations. Definitely not like against that model, but just to say it comes with this sort of deleveraging spiral risk. And so for Gyroscope, the idea is to just essentially diversify the asset holdings in the reserve. And so, yeah, it doesn't, at least for now, it doesn't operate with this, any type of CDP-like vaults. So instead, it aims to be exactly 100% reserve-backed, rather than like, 150 or 300 or whatever the collateralization ratios are now. But its main value is to essentially diversify these different assets. So, an analogy that we've used quite often is like of the sort of, if you had the Titanic, but you had put the bulkhead doors so that they went all the way to the ceiling, you would be able to compartmentalize the risk. And so that's essentially what we want to do with the reserve. But then plus using our new elliptic concentrated liquidity pools, which are extremely capital efficient, to also generate yield from the reserve.
Would you say where MStable went with Aave, you guys went with Balancer kind of a thing? Because it's like almost like a PSM into the underlying strategy, but you choose like concentrated liquidity that you built on top of Balancer, whereas let's say MStable chose depositing it on Aave.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we think of the redemption curve as a sort of like completely new approach to PSM. Yeah, I think the extent to which yeah, like the extent to which sort of integration happens more broadly, I guess we have to see. Yeah.
I'll let you continue.
Cool. No, that was super interesting. Let's talk even more about risk. So on a high-level view, how did you go about identifying this risk in the first place and making sure you cover everything?
Risks?
Risks, yeah.
Maybe we can let Michael jump in. I wouldn't want to hog the panel.
Interesting to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so I guess, well, first of all, our stablecoin is KRGUSD is CDP stablecoin, right? So the risks you get are, let's say, I guess the biggest risk.
Fortunately, we seem to have troubles with.
Yeah, the biggest risk is internet connection, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, for us, it's obviously collateral risk and chain risk. And
oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, man. I completely went ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. It's just my internet dropped. That's it. Anyway, so I guess in our case with CDP model, most of the risks come from how liquidations work. Like if typically if you have like traditional liquidations, you liquidate a lot at once, and sometimes you really cannot do it. And you need to have all the liquidity on chain for that. And if it's not on chain, then you may end up with a bad debt. And this did happen in the past with lending platforms and with stablecoins. So that's kind of a big bottleneck of CDPs. So, and how we address this risk is this soft liquidation mechanism, which we have instead of traditional liquidations. It actually like ensures that you need to exchange just a little bit of collateral to stablecoin, or in our case, backwards as well. And you don't really have to have all this liquidity available on chain. You actually can arbitrage this special AMM, which liquidates the position with centralized exchanges or whatever. So you actually look at how much liquidity you have in all the world, rather than how much liquidity you have on chain. So that's I guess a big thing to de-risk liquidations. But also, like, another thing which one needs to think about in CDPs is price oracles, and how safe they are, how manipulatable they are. So there was a great panel just before about that.
Exactly. Thanks for mentioning price oracle, because with that you're touching third-party dependency risks. So I wanted to ask you how your mechanism compares with what you rely on third parties. What can go wrong there?
Yeah, I think third-party risk is like the biggest thing, because for us, I mean, we never had any issues with liquidations due to price volatility, and we've been through many crashes, more crashes than I wish we would have been. I think in one day we liquidated 400 million of debt, and there was zero bad debt. That's when like the whole Terra Luna thing happened. So I definitely think we nailed down the liquidation part. The third-party risk is the hardest. You look at like when you do, because we're not like your grandfather's stablecoin. We're on many chains, including a lot of L1s that might not be as safe as Ethereum, right? We're on Phantom, we're in Avalanche, we're on Moonbeam, you know, we're on all sorts of chains like that. And so what can go wrong? I mean, you can have catastrophic failure. You can have the actual chain being corrupted, right? You can also have all of the assets on that chain completely becoming worthless in one block, which is what happened on Phantom. And so how do you shield the other chains from, like if I'm borrowing and holding my own optimism, how do I shield myself from people borrowing and lending on Phantom? And so that's something that we're addressing with our V3, because at the end of the day, you can only expect that to happen. You can only expect them to be hacked. When it comes to oracles, I love Chainlink. I mean, Chainlink is amazing. Can it be corrupted? Anything can be corrupted. But I think they've done an amazing job at providing this base layer infrastructure for so many people, and like free, right? Recently they started charging some people, but most people is free. And I mean, there are other options like Redstone and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on the subject of oracles, I would struggle to believe anyone who wasn't able to say that they found oracles terrifying. It's a point of like central dependency for all protocols, or not all, but certainly most stablecoin protocols. They're absolutely, any significant errors can cause just like catastrophic damage. It's sort of, in the stablecoin world, I guess it's one of the prices for paying for trying to tether to an asset that is like fundamentally an off-chain asset. Like this problem of like somehow inferring this off-chain price on-chain is very difficult without relying on centralized providers. So I mean, for the Gyroscope stablecoin specifically, something that we've done is implemented something, it's called the consolidated price feed, that essentially takes like multiple different checks and cross-references them to try to take something that's like a bit like an average of different Oracle feeds. But it's our very best shot at ensuring Oracle safety. But this is like a difficult, important, and scary problem, definitely.
And I agree with you. Like the number one attack vector for our protocol, for any protocol that's like a CDP, is the Oracle. And we've seen many people that don't read chain securities articles getting hacked through the famous curve LP, reentrancy hack. But yeah, it's usually not like, I mean, any oracle can be manipulated. That's like at a base. If you have enough money, you can manipulate an oracle. Now, whether or not you make money on it, that's a function of how you manage your debt ceilings, right? So like, don't make it profitable for somebody to manipulate your oracle. But I think, yeah, a lot of people are not getting hit on the, maybe like at the base layer, like Chainlink just gives you ETH price. I think they get hit on like compounded like assets like STETH, like LPs, or maybe like a strategy on Yearn. Like that's really when you have issues. Or like Vigos, I think that was like a really famous one on Polygon.
Cool. Anyone wants to share an idea you explored during development or during design, but in the end couldn't follow up because you just couldn't mitigate the risk it introduced?
So many. So many, man. I think the number one principle we have for designing Qidao is simplicity. Because if you add extra stuff for the sake of adding extra stuff, you're going to get hacked. And we've seen that with recent events. I can't name names because marketing will kill me. But don't try to be too fancy with it. I think has been our number one thing. Now, one of these ideas that I had was like making the limits for outflow and inflow of from a chain dynamic based on the ratio between circulating supply and debt. What does that mean? How much excess MAI there is compared to how much MAI has been minted on a chain is your bad debt risk from another chain, right? Because as MAI that's minted from other CDPs in another chain. And so if you can limit that percentage, you can kind of have like a limited downside. The problem with that is that it relies on so many like Web2 infrastructure to count circulating supply, to count total debt, that it is highly gameable. So we ended up not doing it.
Super interesting. You're telling us about this cross-chain interaction. Did you already tell us all the cross-chain risks, or is there other keywords we should?
The risks?
Any more cross-chain risks?
So many. I mean, yeah.
Just the keywords, if it's too.
Yeah, no, I think I named the important ones.
Okay.
I don't want to like ramble on.
Good. Good. Michael or Luis, do you want to add something you experienced during the design phase? What you had to abandon?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I would add is still about price oracles. So we actually ended up not using Chainlink or any centralized price oracle. We developed oracles which derive their prices from curve pools, but made in a way that it's like extremely hard to manipulate. So, well, I mean, you still need to think about those things, like what if you can control multiple blocks in a row and can actually change prices during a prolonged time, like that kind of stuff is when you can get funny. But other than that, it's they seem to work really well, and we like found that in our case working better than Chainlink, simply because the Chainlink is probably working better with traditional liquidations, and for soft liquidations you actually need something which is much more smooth, and that's why we kind of had to derive the price oracle from the pools, but so it's fully decentralized. But yes, it's although they are kind of simple, but they need to be thought of really well to make sure they're not manipulatable.
Thanks. Luis, what brings your stablecoin to the limit?
In terms of
Stabilization.
Stabilization.
Yeah.
So, I mean, most of the like 90% of the system or more, basically all of it is supposed to be operative and supported just by the diversified assets in the reserve. So we have these like different sort of safety checks and other things that try to ensure this balance in the reserve. However, in the situation where there's sort of extreme redemption pressure, or in the situation where one or several assets in the reserve depegs. So yeah, just one thing I should just probably make clear is that the reserve is supposed to primarily contain stablecoins itself. So we're much less concerned with this sort of the prices associated with like ETH prices, for example, causing liquidation just by construction. But then if one of these stable assets depegs or undergoes trouble, which is not impossible to imagine, then in that situation, our sort of fallback mechanism, this redemption curve, has to kind of kick in and try to price redemptions based on these outflows. So yeah, a lot of I think quite a few people I've sort of heard talk about the gyroscope stablecoin system as being somehow very complex, but actually the redemption curve is only used in this sort of situation of some kind of market stress. So for most of the time, the logic that's running it is relatively straightforward.
Yeah, it reminds me of also the Angle has some sort of PSM thing, and in an event there's under collateralization, if you will, given a DPEG. They also have some sort of a kick in. I think that's really interesting to take a look at if you guys haven't.
Similar, but a bit from another angle. Are there specific risk regulators bring?
I mean, regulators for us, not as much. I think a lot of stablecoins during the bear kind of got antsy about growth and also about this yield necessity that retail is bringing because of higher yields like T-bills. And so they've all added a bunch of centralized assets like T-bills. And it goes beyond USDC. It's these decentralized finance platforms that are on the verge of being legal, not legal, have now companies that are holding T-bills. And so those people have very high risk of regulatory overhead, right? For us, we've kept this ethos of only decentralized assets as collateral, or at least what our DAO deems as decentralized assets. So USDC wouldn't count, for example. Yep. And what we attempt to do is find a niche in which people don't have to worry about these kind of regulatory overheads. Because MakerDAO has already done a great job about creating a CDP that has both, right? The centralized aspect and decentralized aspect. And we're not in the business of forking or copying, right? We're trying to make something new.
Nice. How much do users or should users be aware of the risks? And are they?
I don't know, maybe we lost Michael, but for us, remember Luna, you couldn't say anything bad about Luna, you couldn't talk about Luna, and the result is that people all over the world now hate crypto.
Yeah,
right?
Terrible.
And so if you go to our docs, maybe 30% of the doc is chain risk, collateral risk, this risk, and all these disclosures about risk, so everybody can read and see what can go wrong. And I think if we're very honest about the limitations of our systems, we don't hide behind marketing gizmos, I think we can keep people safe, because most people will make good decisions. I mean, you'll still have people that just do dumb things, but at least give them the information.
I guess an obvious point to make as well is that we should just try to reduce the level of risk overall. For most products, I think if you were about to use it and you received this long list of things that could go wrong, or all of these many issues right up front, it might sort of make you wonder just how safe is this? And I think but yeah, I completely agree about the importance of disclosing all risks, certainly so people are able to find out this information. But yeah, I think particularly for stablecoins, which are assets that people can really rely on to store wealth and to be a very significant part of their total wealth ultimately. This if people have their funds in an asset like a stablecoin, it better be safe. This is not we saw the fallout from the collapse of Terra. I mean, at a sort of the level of like the human damage that was done, I think this is, catastrophic. And it just like, it's like obviously we should disclose the risks, but we should just also try to reduce the extent to which this sort of thing can happen.
I would just say nobody's safe. Like, there's no such thing as being safe. I mean, every model works until it doesn't. You know, if you're live long enough, you will find that things always go wrong. Things that you never thought could go wrong. I mean, Michael can say this too. I mean, 4 years now. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, if you're live long enough, you eventually find issues. And you just have to be able to overcome them.
Yeah, that brings us to long-term viability of the stablecoins and their mechanism. First, why do we have to discuss this? What changes over time that affects a mechanism that is working now under various circumstances? Why would that change in the future?
I'm sorry, well...
The long-term viability of this mechanism.
Viability?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you need to bake in upgradability into your system in a way that doesn't sacrifice the initial people and like their kind of like contract with you. Because things change. Things change a lot. Look at Maker, how much it's changed since it started. Look at Curve. Look at everybody. Uniswap, we were all already at Uniswap before. Similarly, we are now at the verge of Cheetah v3, which will completely change everything about Cheetah. But we will not let go of the people that, like behind, right? Because if you don't have backwards compatibility, you're not building up, you're building sideways.
But if your system would stay like it is now, the same stabilization mechanism would continue to work.
Yeah, I mean, well, unless, Avalanche decides to rug or, Ethereum ceases to exist. And these are things that are like possible. Are they like likely? No. But that's why I don't think any financial system in crypto today, you can just leave it alone and walk away. Because the fact is, while you don't change, the world around you changes. And if you don't bake that into your system, you're going to eventually get wrecked.
Mm-hmm. Luis, do you want to add on this, or is your system stable? Just runs.
One short point, I guess, is that it's pretty clear that stablecoin systems shouldn't depend on, they shouldn't only work when the markets are very healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was, in essence, the reason that all of the sort of kind of pure algorithmic stablecoin attempts rightfully failed. And yeah, we just it shouldn't be the case that you depend on some volatile asset exclusively as a sort of means of collateral, and that if you have in the sort of algorithmic stablecoin sense, not the CDP sense, but it shouldn't be the case that if you have some market downturn, then everything just falls apart. I think that's a pretty clear lesson from the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think those founders don't really care, because those are like one cycle founders, and a lot of them are in Dubai right now in big villas. So they did what they wanted to do and they achieved it. So, but I agree with you. They shouldn't just last one cycle.
Yeah. Cool. What progress in the underlying blockchain technology or in the DeFi space, or even if the user base grow, what change would require the next generation of stabilization mechanism? Or where do you see the evolution from stabilization mechanism from here? I mean, especially in the cross-chain world, I'm sure you have interesting insights.
I think we're seeing a slow, ever-changing improvement of these systems. Like if you have different kind of buckets of stablecoins. You have what I like to call the PSM, like pass-through stablecoins. We started with very simple things like mstable. Just deposit an Aave, you get the yield, kind of a thing. Now we have way more complex things like with gyroscope. Not saying it's complex, but it's much more let's say sophisticated, like the idea. Also CDP side, right? Like Cheetah v3, I think is going to completely change. What we think about a stable coin in CDPs, just like Curve did with their self-liquidations. And so, I mean, I don't think there's going to be Rune comes back from his slumber and then suddenly this is the next stage of stablecoins. I think it's going to be a very boring and long, improvement. Yeah, with like maybe spikes of innovation, but nothing crazy. If it's mostly just like marketing, I think.
Cool. So we talked about how important it is to mitigate risks, reduce risks, so that the stablecoins safe for the user holding them over a long time. These mechanisms have evolved a lot over the last years. Nevertheless, today there are different stablecoins with different mechanisms, right? So are we optimizing for different objectives? And there will always be different stablecoins with different mechanisms? Or will this converge once we figured out the perfect mechanism?
What do you guys think? I don't want to hog the mic.
I think still there will be different flavors of stable coins for different purposes and different audiences. So I don't think there is one which fits all.
Sure, but there will be learnings to share and then individual solutions to these problems.
Of course, yeah. And there will be cross-sharing of ideas and ideas in one stablecoin will improve the other and whatever. But yeah, it's like even here, like gyroscope is so much different from CDPs, and it's still like both are very rightful models.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think there's probably no perfect model for a stablecoin. There are clearly models that don't work, and I think it's important that we learn from things that don't work.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely a space that's ripe for experimentation. I think it's a very exciting space, and it's also it's not clear that that you have different stablecoins for different use cases, or you certainly can do. So it makes sense that I would imagine the future is a multi-stablecoin world, essentially, with different stablecoins for different uses.
Yeah, I agree with that, and because this stablecoins are not the dollar. Like the dollar does not exist on the blockchain. I mean, we can get that over with. They're derivatives, and these derivatives have different use cases. For us, it's like financing. It's like being the opposite bet to the person that has collateral, for example. For others, it can be earning yield from underlying strategies of that collateral, and which has nothing to do with each other. The only thing that binds them, I guess, is that they're worth $1. But I would even say they're a different class of derivatives altogether.
Nice. I was told to put aside a few minutes of questions for the audience. Does anyone have a question for our speakers? Otherwise, we continue here. If you have any closing remark, anything you want to share about risk mitigation?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, as an industry, we should champion people that are building new things, like Gyroscope, like CRV USD, like our new V3. Let's stop forking Liquidity and let's start making, I mean, Liquidity, I love Liquidity, but even them, they're doing a V2. So let's push ourselves to innovate and experiment, because it's not like we are in our end state. We're incredibly small compared to TradFi, and I would hope that we still have more innovation to do.
No, I would just add that the launch of Gyroscope is sort of incredibly imminent, so look out for it.
Good luck, yeah. Excited. Michael, do you have any final words to add? I guess we lost the internet again. Last chance for audience questions. Cool, then let's wrap up. Thanks a lot for participation in panel. I guess all speakers will be here around all day. If you have questions, don't hesitate to talk to them. Thanks for listening in. Thank you.
Thank you.